And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey folks, today we're taking a look at Orcs Must Die, the board game. Now I have here the Unchained edition and the Order edition, which I believe if you put the boxes together, they make a picture. Woo! Now, this is essentially the same game. I'm reviewing them together because there's no reason really to review them separately. They are mirror images of each other with minor differences between them. If you know how to play one, you'll know how to play the other. If you like it, you're going to like this. If you don't like this, you're not going to like this, etc. Now, Orcs Must Die is a very popular video game, which I have never played. So take that into account when watching this review, but that means I'm coming to this with the look at somebody who's looking to see how good the game is. However, I did play it with at least one person who does like the video game, so we have that kind of reference to go from. I wanted to know what they thought of it. This is essentially a tower defense game where there's hordes of bad guys, or I guess if you're playing the orcs, good guys, whatever. There's tons of minions coming at your rift. This is a thing you need to protect, and so you're going to protect this and fight off the hordes and hordes using traps and weapons. Let's take a look at how it plays. When playing this game, players are going to be using a map book and they're going to pick a specific map. The maps will tell you how difficult they are and they'll tell you what tiles to place out. You can really make any map you want. In fact, the book has spots in the back for you to build your own maps. When you're building a map, you're going to have a rift. This is what the bad guys are going to be destroying. And then you'll have a bunch of tiles that point there. Now, most of the tiles, even though they have these names on them, stairway to spillway and narrow bridge and cafeteria and drawbridge, etc. They're pretty much the same. They're pretty much generic despite their names on them. There are some tiles that will have crossroads or L shapes so that you can make things move or have enemies spawn in different directions. And there are some tiles that have actually special things that heroes can do, ways to kill the enemies like push them into the lava lake, etc. The heroes are defending the rift. The rift here is what they're trying to stop the bad guys from getting into. When a hero dies, the rift takes some damage. But for the most part, when you die, you're going to come back to life. So it's not about protecting yourself as it is protecting the rift. Each player is going to have a board showcasing their hero, and they each have a special ability. They have a special thing if you're playing a rivalry, which is where you can play one group against another group. I think you need 2 versions of the game to do that. You'll have a special ability, and then you have an ultimate ability, and this here is represented by an ultimate token, which you can spend to use, and then through a very expensive process, you guys can regenerate these, but for the most part, you're not going to get to use these very often. Each player also has health that they're going to keep track of, and they start with a weapon here, which can be upgraded. The weapon will show you how much dice. You can see they all start with 1 white die, except for the wizard here, who starts with a yellow die. The players also have a main board here where they keep track of the rift display. This is where they keep track of their skulls. This shows the health of the rift. When it gets down to 0, you lose. You have a marker up here to keep track of what level you're on. When everyone goes up a certain level, the enemies get harder and the heroes can do things. And then there's traps and items that are going to be placed here. This gear and things are also based on level, and most of the gear is a one-time use, but some things are great. Like this, for example, adds a red die to your attack all the time. This one lets you roll a green die, which is kind of a healing die. This one here gives you 2 extra white dice. This is great equipment. And then there's also traps that the heroes will be able to take. A love trap will do these 2 different damage symbols, and you're going to be able to place these traps in different areas where they'll go off when the monsters go into them. Many of the traps are discarded after the monsters go through, but for the most part, some of them are going to stay there and do damage also to the monsters. There are army cards. There's a certain number of army cards based on the level and what it tells you to do. Each time you bring out an army, it's 3 cards. You'll turn it over and you're going to bring out enemies equal to the number of players. So if we're playing a 4-player game, we're bringing out 3 orcs, 2 trolls, 2 crossbow orcs, 2 kobolds, hobgoblin shaman, 2 of them, 2 kobolds, and 3 crossbow orcs. So you have a ton of stuff here, and these guys are going to be coming out in groups. And then each of them is going to be moving and attacking based on a board that has all the stats of the different monsters. Orcs, crossbow orcs, kobolds, gnolls, hobgoblins, shaman, trolls, and ogres. And it's going to, there's some things if you don't have enough to put out, it tells you what to replace them with. And each monster is going to roll different dice depending on what level the game is in. And it also shows a symbol here. This symbol is their vulnerability. When you're attacking them, that's what you need to roll. So like orcs, when they're level 3, you need to roll 2 swords to kill them. While when they're level 1 and 2, you only need 1 sword. While kobolds, you need to roll a foot with a wing on it. It's really a weird symbol, honestly. Looks kind of like a rocket ship. And you need 2 here. While ogres don't even show up on the first level, but when they do, you need 2 swords and a brain to kill them, or 2 swords and 2 brains. When people are attacking each other, they're going to be rolling dice. There are different symbols on the different dice, which, you know, some dice are going to have special things like freezing the enemy, and the yellow one has more of the foot symbols than anything else. But usually you're rolling basic dice here, and like I said, you're trying to roll the symbol, the person you're attacking, and the enemies, the bad guys, like here, the wizard's vulnerable to brains, so every time a monster rolls a brain, then he's going to take a damage. So the combat is pretty simple. And you're going to be, on your turn, taking an action and moving and attacking these guys and trying to clear them off the board. And each turn, they're going to be moving, setting off traps and killing themselves and attacking you. But they're not going to be like, they're not, again, their goal isn't to kill you. Their goal is to go here and into here. In fact, these guys here, for example, don't even really attack the heroes. They're just running to the rift, but they're going to do more damage to the rift. As heroes kill the bad guys, they're going to be getting these skulls. You'll be putting these on your sheet. You can also transfer these skulls to the general pool in the rift display. If you are the rift leader each turn, he can do that. And when you're buying upgrades, you can use things from here, or you can use them from your own personal pool every time that you kill enemies. As I said, each player can upgrade their weapon. So Maximilian can upgrade his crossbow to one that uses 2 white dice, then 3 white dice, then 5 white dice when he gets to the maximum level. Although you can't upgrade these until the whole board is like, once you're in level 2, you can go up to heavy crossbow. You can't go there before then. And Gabrielle, for example, she can upgrade to where she's rolling 2 white dice and an automatic sword, 3 white dice and an automatic lightning bolt, and 4 white dice plus a sword and a lightning bolt eventually. That's pretty much the game in a nutshell. The enemies will win if they destroy your rift. Like I said, there's a rivalry game you can play where each team has their own rift, and you'll take your team up against another team. You're both fighting monsters, but you can also go attack each other. You're trying to make their rift die first. What about the other box, you might ask? Well, inside here, this is essentially almost a mirror image. The enemies are slightly different here, although there's a bear and a giant, which kind of correspond to the troll and the ogre, and soldiers correspond to the orcs, and they're going to be a little bit different, but everything else is pretty much the same. Again, minor special ability differences, but the game is played the exact same way. By the way, each game comes with a thing that shows you how to put everything in the plastic insert, which I found nice. Now, I personally like this version's miniatures better. I think they're really cool. I like the different, you know, here you're playing the orcs, and I mean, you're fighting this giant bear. This is like one of my favorite miniatures in a game ever. And we also have a giant, these guys are great, great miniatures. And then, of course, the same kind of tiles are going to show up. So it's basically a mirror copy, but if you want to play orcs fighting off waves of humans, same thing. Alrighty, well, first of all, highly recommend these miniatures. The whole thing comes together in a nice package. The miniatures are just great. They look good across the board. You know, you need to paint miniatures most of the time, but like this lion guy here, that's just a really cool miniature. I really like them. The human minion miniatures, they're really great. But I mean, they're all good across the board. The whole thing packages together. The dice are good for the most part, but they could have been better quality. The pictures look, it's really weird because the art in the game is really good. And then the sketchings on the dice look like, I don't know, like a 10-year-old did them. They're just not that good. Now, I don't get the humor in the game, I guess. We have stained glass hall and fancy mezzanine, and it's a little weird to me that there's all this stuff with big words, lookout point, and botanical gardens, and things like that. And these are essentially all the same, right? They don't matter. I could have just put out big ones. And I don't mind that. I love the artwork. It's just weird that the big words are there, troubled water. Am I supposed to put the bridge over the troubled water? I don't know. So that's fine. It just is a little odd to me. And here's the odd thing about the game itself. The game itself is an incredibly simple game. And it has where is the rule book for this game? I believe the rule book here is 59 pages for a really simple game. Now the pages are nice and big and they show you pictures and explain things with tips on the sides of them. And yet with all that, with the game being simple, it's not that easy to figure out from the rules. They're just written in really weird orders, and some really basic stuff are written fairly complicated, and you have to kind of use the FAQ to figure out everything. It took me the longest time to figure out how to set up a map and just to how the things worked. And when you play it, you're like, oh, that's it. Bad guys come in, they move, you roll dice, they roll dice, etc. Why do I need a 59-page rule book for that? Just a little off-putting there. Now, the theme of the game is fine. They're coming in to get the portal, but we want to know about gameplay itself. I already said it was simple, but I'm not sure it's simple good. My biggest problem with this game is it's boring. It's boring simple. Now, I don't mind the idea of simplicity, of having hordes coming in, fighting them off. There's some games I really like that do that. In fact, there's one on the shelf right behind me, Project Elite, a simple game where there's hordes of stuff coming in and you fight them off. The problem with this one is I never felt like I was making any kind of informed decisions. It's like, hey, you're here. There's monsters. Roll dice. See if you kill them. Let's set some traps up. What traps should we buy? We have a few to pick from. Let's obviously pick the ones that we can A, afford, and B, seem to do the damage against these monsters. These monsters take damage from swords. Buy a trap that does more swords. It's just really obvious stuff. And I was really not happy with the amount of luck in this game. Those dice are super lucky. You're like, I'm going to kill some orcs. I need to roll swords. No swords. Oh, well. Hey, all swords. Yay. And I wanted a little bit more from the game. You have a weapon that you can upgrade, but you can only upgrade it when everything levels up. And if that's the way things work, that's not interesting. If everything levels up, the monsters and you all level up in pretty much the same way. Like, for example, I need to roll a sword to kill an orc. Great, I have 1 die, no good. Hey, now I got 3 dice, but now I need to roll 2 swords to kill an orc. It's almost the same thing. So what's the point? And you don't have like a choice of what weapon. You have one weapon. You can level that up, and you really should because you're going to be rolling that all the time. At the beginning of the game, most of the traps and equipment are one-shots, and it's like, ooh, add a yellow die. I rolled a blank. Well, that was a wasted amount of money I put into that piece of equipment. That's just garbage. And there's so much luck involved, which monsters show up, what the monsters roll against you, what you roll against them, that when you win, if you win, you're like, do we deserve this victory? Did we do anything, or did the dice just get lucky? I like the idea of setting up traps, especially there's traps you can put between things. But honestly, this whole thing that you're building in each map, they're like, ooh, how is this map different than the next one? It's not. It curves. Or this one here, I mean, there's some rooms with lava and you can push them in lava. That's interesting. But for the most part, the maps are all very similar. You can play, you're like, ooh, what's this scenario do? In this scenario, the orcs are going to rush in and jump into the rift. Great. What about this scenario? In this scenario, the orcs are going to rush in and jump in the rift. What about this scenario? In this scenario, they're going to come in from 2 different directions and jump in the rift. In this scenario, they're going to hit a thing and go 3 different ways and then maybe hit the rift. And it's like minor variations on the same theme. Da 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 da. And I don't know. There's a lot of pieces here, a lot of dice, and a lot of great miniatures. But it doesn't add up to make a compelling game. Fans of the video game, maybe they will like it. Although, like I said, I played with one, and he was just as disenchanted with the game as I was. It looks great. It looks like, we're trying to like this game. Like, oh, come on in. But when you roll dice and you miss, you're like, yay, what could I have done differently? Nothing. You just roll the dice and see what happens. So, maybe fans of the video game will like it more. Although I would imagine many of them are going to like it because it has good miniatures and because they like the video game, so the board game version has to be good. You know what? That's simply not true. The board game version doesn't have to be good, and in this case, it isn't. Dice Tower judgment, just too light.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool Stuff, in stock. Check them out at coolstuffinc.com.
Shut the door.